Hello, Adam Casey here, your Lake Lemon District Manager. I was in the process of writing an article for the August newsletter to come out about the hydraulic dredging and wanting to give an update. As I was about 2 to 3 pages in and realized it would not fit in the newsletter, I decided just to do a video update. So I'm going to go ahead and share a PowerPoint with everybody, and we'll kind of go through the hydraulic dredging project and get some information and where we're at and where we're heading, and hopefully answer all those questions that everybody has. So I will go ahead and share the PowerPoint with everyone. So this will be the August 2022 dredging update. We're going to go through a handful of items such as the project location, how the deltas function, why we're digging where we are, the equipment that we're using, where we are at currently, where our disposal sites are at, and items for moving forward. So first we have our this dredging update page, and let me go ahead and expand this. We have our dredging update page. We're going to talk initially about the project location and the Delta hydraulics and kind of saying why we are focusing where we are at. So this is our initial Lake Lemon proposed sediment removal areas map. I believe it's from 2006 is what it says at the bottom there. And this is really showing the lake bathymetry or depths of sediment in 2006. So it's a quick snapshot. So you can see where Bean Blossom Creek comes in. The very shallow areas, these red and oranges, are still primarily east of Salmon Harbor, Salmon Point, and straight off of Little Africa. We really don't see a whole lot into this eastern bay right here. But what we do notice is that the bulk of the sediment, or the areas where we see the shallowest water depths, are right at the mouth of the creek where it's entering into the lake. And that really happens because of the slowdown in water velocity as the lake, comes from this rushing creek, hits a very large body of water. The velocity slows down, so the sediment starts to settle out. This is actually a little video that I was able to find online that shows how it works. So as the creek comes in, the volume of water increases. This is where the lake would be. There's a decrease in velocity of the streamline, so the sediment starts to settle out with your larger sediment, gravel and such settling out first, and then moving down to the finer particles. The clay type materials and the really fine silts actually will make it far out into the lake because they're just so light, they don't settle out very much. So that's why we do see sedimentation occurring in the lake as a whole. You can have upwards of 30% is what we've seen from our sediment transport study that we did a year or two ago with Christopher Burke Engineering, showing about 30% of sediment was settling out in the delta, primarily the larger stuff. But we are seeing sediment settling out across the whole lake, just the finer stuff. So it is a whole lake issue with the sedimentation. Next, lab. Sorry about the phones. Next, we have our current bathymetric study. Make sure nobody's on the line. Next, we have our current bathymetric study from 2019. And what we start to see here, and the coloring is not as well as that 2006 map, but this really shallow areas are starting to come out well into the lake past that Salmon Point. This area that we see right past the point, this is a 3 foot depth, 4 foot depth, and then starting to get into your 5 foot. So you're really starting to see this area become shallow. And this really goes in line with the shallow area marker buoys that we have in the Eastern Bay. They really kind of just highlight this whole area right here. And again, as we noticed, this is right where the creek jumps out, starts to get deep. the volume, the velocity of water slows down, so the sediment starts to settle out. And that falls right in line with our dredging zones. And these are the proposed zones from our initial conceptual report that we did with Shrewsbury Engineering. We have zones 1 through 5. This zone 1 really falls in line with the super shallow area right here. You can almost stand, well, you can stand and barely get your ankles wet across the creek channel from Solomon Point there, Ellis Point. So we're currently working in this zone 1, and then we'll move northwards through the zones up to our vegetation maintenance line until we are out of essentially capacity for storage of the sediment or out of financing to continue the project. On here, we do actually show this number 19 element is where our current dredge disposal settling basin is at that we created over the wintertime, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Next, we get into the barge mechanics and operation, and we'll just kind of talk about the equipment that's out there and how it works. So this is the actual barge that is on Lake Lemon. Here's a close-up shot, and then we have a far-away shot showing our large barge, which is being rented. And the way it works is there's a cable system that runs between the two barges, and their dredge runs along the cable to keep their transect straight. So it cuts about an 8-foot wide path. They run the cable, move the cable, 6 to 7 feet. So there's some overlap, run that transect again. So our barge is really being used as an anchoring barge. There's another small barge setup they use, and then there's a cable that runs between the two to allow the dredge to cut these straight lines. So you're kind of typewritering the depth in as you go. So here is just an image of a kind of a cartoon or animated image of the dredge. This is the same style that we have on the lake. So there is a cutter head that kind of looks between a mix of a snowblower auger and a stump grinder that comes down on a lever underground that actually chops through the sediment. And then there is a pump right behind the cutter head. So as it chops through the sediment, it sucks that slurry into pipes. These are 8-inch pipes on this dredge, and then it runs through the pipes to the disposal basin. So this is our disposal basin pre-actually being built. This is what we used to bid out the project when we're initially designing the basin and doing the bids. So what we do have over here is this black line is essentially the line that the piping follows from the hydraulic dredge to the settling basin. So the pipes come, past Ellis Point through the shallow areas. They've actually lowered the level of the piping at Bean Blossom Creek so you can cross there, and then it comes back up. It comes through this wetland, very shallow area, under South Shore Drive where the bridge is at, and then the pipe comes up the hills and then dumps into the southwest corner of the basin. As the water flows across the basin, what happens is the sediment settles out, similar to the delta coming into the lake. The sediment settles out as the water flows across, and then we have an outflow pipe or weir system in the northeast corner where water is allowed to flow back in. And this would be the clean water without as much sediment in it. Here is some videos and then pictures of the actual site being made. So this was with a company, I think is United Excavating, that performed all this work. This is when they were starting to get down into the nitty gritty and mud. So they had to rent quite a few track trucks to keep running to stay on top of the mud. And we actually went down till we hit bedrock, so as deep as we could in this area. It's hard to show for scale, but that excavator is larger than our large excavator. And then those are full-size track trucks. So those walls that you're seeing there are approximately 37 to 40 feet high. So here you can see the sediment being loaded up from the excavator and then trucked on the track trucks to the disposal area, which was that valley area that we have on the western edge of that basin. This is a picture of the bottom. Once we hit to the bottom layer, once we were in the bedrock and it couldn't really go any lower, and then graded it out. It's hard to see scale here, but again, these walls are approximately 37 to 40 feet high from the bottom of the basin. So this would be a view, looking in. Ultimately, the weir system was put into this corner. You can't really see it in this picture. I don't think it was installed yet. So here's a picture of the finalized basin. This was the spring before we started pumping, so that's just groundwater and rainwater in the basin. But you can see that the final grading, the outsides all got the erosion mat on it and grass, and we're just starting to see grass grow. So I would estimate this would be in March or April once that was all done. We do have where the ultimate pipe came in is the southwest corner when the water flows across, and the weir is installed here on that eastern basin. We did end up using geofencing and stone to cover the weir pipe up. That way we do have filtration if we're utilizing the pump coming out of the basin to increase water flow. So to talk about the hydraulic sluice characteristics, and the sluice is the actual slurry, water sediment slurry that's being pumped from the lake into the disposal basin. Here we see a picture of this glorious, very dark chocolate milk looking sediment laden water that's coming into the basin. It spills into the basin from this pipe and then flows down into the water. You can kind of see in this corner the sediment from that slurry coming in, but it actually settles out real quick. We've been impressed with how quickly it is settling out in the basin. So here's just a little video. And this was when we initially started dredging. So this would have been within the first 2 weeks of dredging, and the pipe that's coming in and the slurry coming out of the pipe. This is a picture from today, August 23rd, I think it is, at the disposal basin. We're actually starting to see some sediment accumulation piling up at the surface in the area where the pipe is coming in. Now the sediment will settle out, and then as it flows across, it'll create its own water path and then keep settling out. So you'll start to have these islands or masses of land start to form out across the basin that we have there. We currently haven't had any issues with the settling time due to residence time, which is how long the water has to flow across and the sediment to settle out. There's currently enough time for that sediment to settle out that we're really not seeing any come out the overflow pipe. If we get to the point where that residence time is decreased significantly due to the capacity of the basin shrinking as we put material into it, there are methods that we have to increase the settling rate of the sediment. This would be utilizing flocculants, which is a chemical similar to what's used in a wastewater treatment plant. And what it does is it combines all these small particles together to create larger particles so they settle out faster. So if we get to the point that we are not happy with the quality of water flowing out of the pipe, we can put in these polymers or flocculants, and we can increase that settling rate to clear up the water. Here's another picture from today. Again, just that really dark sediment laden water coming into the pond, and you can start to see the sediment build up. And this far corner over here is the spillway pipe for the water that can flow back out. Since there's so much water that comes in, there is going to be water flow coming out there. The flow that we see coming out of that spillway pipe is supposed to happen. We just can't fill up, forever because we'd get over the wall. So it comes into the spillway pipe. That water flows back down along the road ditch and then under the road through a channel on South Shore Drive there and back into the lake. And that's what allows us to continually dredge. That slurry gets pumped in, it flows across, the sediment falls out, and then that clean top water, sometimes called natant water, is what flows out of that spill pipe. So just one more image again. This would have been quite a while ago, and I think this might have been an image of that video we showed just a little bit ago. So mechanical, this is actually a video, and we're not going to talk about mechanical dewatering. It was difficult to snapshot the video. But what we are going to show here is how the settling basin works. So this would be similar to ours, pretty simplified. But what happens is the sluice and the dredge material gets pumped into the water. As the water flows across, that sediment starts to fall out and you kind of get the land formations, which we see here. That water flows across, and then there's less and less sediment because it has time to settle out. And then that upper water, the effluent water, flows out of the spillway. So this is, pretty much identical to the system that we are using. So here would be the intake for the overflow pond. This is on the pond side, the water that you can see flowing out of it. It just looks like late summer pond water. I would be willing to guess it's a little bit clearer than the lake at this point in August. But what we primarily see coming out and the coloration that we have in the water would be, different types of plankton and algae that form in the water as late summer ponds and lakes do in Indiana. And we actually test this. So part of the permitting and part of our due diligence is making sure that the sediment coming in is not making it back into the lake. So we go out and we take samples at the inflow pipe and the outflow pipe and look at that. So here's a sample that we actually took last week. I think these are 2.5 quarts jars that we used to collect the sample. On the left, we have our inflow water, and on the right, we have our outflow water. So we fill these up, then we let the water evaporate off. We can see how much material is in that water coming in and coming out. So from the sides, you can kind of see where that sediment level is. And this is really good actually for the inflow coming in. We're looking at 25 to upper 20% of material in that water coming into the lake. So this is after we've let the water evaporate off. You can kind of see the sediment line here for the material, and the water's gone. On the right side here, we have our outflow water. Lake lemon mugs. We have our outflow water, and you can see there's really no sediment almost at all in this after the water has evaporated. When we look from the top, we can see the sediment from the inflow pipe, and then there is some material in the outflow pipe, but it really again looks like that algae. It's just kind of green cells from the algae and very really kind of no sediment that we're noticing in there. And we continue to monitor this as well because there will come a point where the residence time or the time that water has to flow across will become diminished, and we will have to enhance and supplement the rate of settling out. So that's when we will start using the flocculants or materials to help that sediment combine and settle out faster. So this is an active process monitoring that. The sediment coming in is not just flowing back out. It's just the water, the top layer of water that's coming out. So we'll talk about sediment removal stats. And the first stat that I do want to say is we're currently around 25,000 yards that have been removed so far. So it's about twice what we could do in a year, and they're continuing going. The rate of removal is a little bit slower than they were initially anticipating because of how much elevation change we have going up to the disposal site from where the area of dredging is on the lake. So they're running the barge kind of at maximum capacity, and we're going to supplement that a little bit to increase the rate. And we'll talk about that shortly. First, what we have is the bathymetric survey from Heartland Dredging, and this was taken prior to any of the dredging occurring. So this outlined area in red is the areas that we have dredged so far, and you can see, a lot of this is that barely over 2 feet. Here is Ellis Point on the right-hand side, and then that water, less than 2 feet, just over 1 coming out. So again, this is the area that we have dredged, but this is the pre-bathymetric survey. The barge system was facing north-south, cutting the transects, but moving eastward, which is what this rectangle is. So they've cut out this area, and then they rotated. So the barge is heading The barge setup is north-south. So on the bottom one, I guess the barge ran east to west. The barges are east to west with a cable between. They cut that section, and then they rotated to get the shallower area. And now they'll be moving north to south with a barge on either end, and they'll cut these transects out one at a time and move through that incredibly shallow area right there. So this is the bathymetric survey as of August 15th, I believe it was. So we can see all these areas that were at 2 to 3 feet have now been dredged out right around the 5 foot mark. They are shooting for 5.5 feet. That way, in case there's any sediment settling, we're still at that 5 foot mark. Some of these are showing, right at 5 feet. But we do have to remember that these current water levels are, we're probably 4 to 6 inches below normal pool right now. I'd estimate about 4 below normal pool right now. So these water levels are from the current pool level, but then when they calculate this, they do adjust for what the pool level is. And all of this information is sent to our engineers to verify how much sediment is removed. So while it is going a little bit slower than they would like, the contract that we have is based on the actual material that is removed from the lake. So the longer it takes, and we don't want it to take an incredibly amount of long time, but the longer it takes, the only one who stands to lose money is the dredging company, since it's based on the material removed. So again, we have about 25,000 yards removed to date. And Heartland Dredging is actually bringing in, they are updating and servicing a booster pump right now to bring in and put in line. So with the amount of lift and elevation change that we have on the dredging operation, if they push the pressure too high, what happens is the pipes break apart at their connections. So they're going to be bringing in a booster pump to put in line near South Shore Drive to alleviate the pressure on the barge and then provide some more power to pump that sediment up the hill. And they're anticipating that they can have up to a 50% increase in production rates once that booster pump is coming in. So I don't think we're going to be done in November as we were expecting. It will likely go through the winter and then be done early spring next year. Again, though, the timing on that, it's the amount of material moved that we're being billed for. And once they increase this rate, it should be going quite a bit quicker. So that'll be very nice. One of the benefits and some discussions that we've been having is if we continue dredging into the next year, for additional dredging, whether we bid out that contract or modify our current contract for more sediment, the benefit of them actually taking a little bit of time is they will already be here in the early spring and late winter. So if we do need to do another project, we're able to continue the project. We should see a substantial savings in the cost because there would be no mobilization. Essentially, they'll have to move the pipe potentially, but all the other equipment will be on here. Most of the pipe will be set up. So if we do extend this project, into the next year or two, we'll see a substantial savings with mobilization if we move forward with Heartland Dredging. So it's a blessing and a curse. Were we hoping to be done by November? Yes. If we're going to be done in early springtime, it gives us the opportunity to move forward and save money to maximize this current project. So, talk about some options once the basin is full. The upland basin on South Shore Drive will be full during this project. Whether that happens late this winter or early spring, it's hard to say. The actual volume at the spillway pipes, where we couldn't put any more sediment, is just over 120,000 yards. The water does expand the volume of that sediment, so we're not going to reach 120,000 in that basin likely. It'll probably be closer to 100,000 actually fits in the basin. If we have the money and if we were able to continue dredging, the next spot that is on the table and that is with our permitting is utilizing the adjacent pond off the South Shore Drive Long Causeway. So this is the South Shore Drive pond. Area is about 15 acres. And this is in the permitting that we have. So once our site is full, we can transition into utilizing the site. If we do not use this and that permit expires, the site will likely not be permitted again it was allowed because it's in conjunction with an upland site, and we're removing such a large amount of sediment out of the floodplain into our upland disposal basin that they allowed us to use this pond also. And if we use it, it will be planted for a treatment wetland, so it'll improve water quality. It gives habitat for reptiles and fish. Birds love it. It would be a water quality improvement. So last week, myself and Ross Carlson, our operations supervisor, actually wanted to hammer out what the true capacity was of this pond if we were to move forward with utilizing it. So we were able to borrow some equipment from Aquatic Control, who does our vegetation surveys. And they have some really good sonars that they use to do this bathymetric mapping, and they do our bathymetric mapping as well. So there's some pictures of Ross and Aquatic Control helping us set up the sonar system, and the picture of me and Ross doing our transects. Essentially ran close to 14 miles of transects, moving 10 feet at a time to map the whole bottom layer of this. So here was the first layer of mapping that we did, and then we had the second round to fill this gap in. The average depth was right around just over 6 feet in this whole pond. And on our initial Shrewsbury report, they were estimating that the pond would hold about 80,000 acres. And that was based on the average depth in the lake in that area. So we didn't know how accurate that was going to be. We wanted to get out there. So what we have actually seen is that the volume in that pond is substantially more than we initially thought. The volumes are approximately 98 acre feet or 158,000 cubic yards. So if we move forward, if we decide to finance the project, continue forward to maximize this permitting and project, we'd be able to fit almost 160,000 yards of material in this pond. So we can more than double this initial project removal if we utilize the pond. And that was a big eye-opening moment because we had to decide if we would use it, if it would be worth it, if the capacity was there. But having close to 160,000 cubic yards of storage makes that a very optimal site for continuing the project. And with that additional yardage, we could see the majority of that eastern bay instead of just these zones 1 and 2 in the southern part. We should see the majority of that eastern bay up to the Lotus line at 5 feet. So that would help everybody out that lives up the creek, lives in Eidolon, that boats in that bay. It would keep that bay open and safe. So we'll be discussing this in the board meetings moving forward with the budgeting options and how we would finance this. I do think it would be a shame not to utilize as part of the permitting and keep moving forward. If we were able to do that 160,000 yards and spread it over, a 2-year project, that gives us a 3-year plan where we can continue dredging, working on getting another disposal site, and work on removing the sediment from our upland site during that. So that is our August dredging update. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the office. It's hard to get a very detailed dredging update into the newsletter with the short format that we have. I will try to continue these video updates, monthly as we go along. But the dredging is going along. We've gotten about 25,000 plus yards removed. The hydraulic dredgers are bringing in a booster pump to increase productivity up to 50%. We will be looking at late winter, early spring until this first contract is done. We are monitoring the water coming out of the disposal basin. The water is supposed to flow out of there. That was part of the design, but we do monitor to make sure the sediment's not making it back into the lake. And then if we move forward in the budget process, we'll be talking about financing utilization of the overflow pond to really double this project and make a massive impact, which would be amazing. This project currently under contract, is essentially removing as much sediment as we have since 2006 when we started the in-house dredging project. If we can double that, then in 2 to 3 years, we will take out more than would have taken us 30 years initially. And that is pretty amazing. And it's awesome to see this finally on the ground. We really need to step up and utilize new technology to ensure the lifespan of this lake. And I think we've never really heard anything against the hydraulic dredging. It's just really finding out the financing and how much people are willing to go along with the project. So it's amazing to see it underway, how much we're getting moved, how much will be removed. I think it's a major step in the right direction, and just kind of a major shift in our operation. It really is a new era for the Lake Limit Conservancy District and trying to preserve this beautiful resource. So, again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the office. You can shoot me an email at manager@lakelimit.org, and we will hope to get anything that you need. Thank you.